Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Collecting the King show. I'm your host, Robert Alaniz, and this is episode 9. And we're calling this episode Stay Away Joe. As you know, I like to title my shows after Elvis songs. Today, we are going to show you the second part of our interview with Joe Tunzi, and that's going to be the majority of the show. So I wanted to come up with a title, and a friend of mine said, well, I got the perfect title. Just call it Stay Away Joe. And I thought, well, I didn't feel too comfortable with that. But it was explained to me that if you listen to the song, in the song, it goes, hey, look who's back, Stay Away Joe. And then it says, welcome back, Stay Away Joe. And it's actually, they're kind of happy to see him. So, all right, enough of that. Again, I want to thank everybody for all the comments and the emails that we're getting. It's a lot of fun. I'm getting emails from around the world, and I'm from places like South Africa, Germany, England, of course, the UK, which is a great Elvis fan country. But just a little bit of everywhere. And what's really fun is a lot of you are recognizing me from Memphis at the Collecting the King show that we did in Memphis for all those years. So it's great to hear from everybody. Keep sending me the emails and keep putting in your comments here and there. I'd love to hear from you. So before we get to part 2 of our interview with Joe Tunzi, I thought I'd do something a little different for this show, for the opening. And what I wanted to do was I want to talk a little bit about some of the new releases. So let's start with this. This is Elvis in Nashville, 4 CD set from BMG. And let me just say, wow. This is a great follow-up, by the way, to the American Sound Studios set that came out the year before. When I first heard about this, I wasn't too thrilled about it because I thought, well, this is basically all the songs from That's the Way It Is, Love Letters, and Elvis Country, which all great material and great songs, and Elvis still sounds great, but not as strong recordings as the American Sound Studio stuff, if you know what I mean. But much to my surprise, I put it on, and I listened to the first disc and was like blown away. I mean, blown away. What Ernst and them did was fantastic. They took out all of the background vocals, or most of them, and just really focused on Elvis's voice, and then focused on the surrounding instruments, and maybe even adding a touch of some kind of ambient sound to them, so that you sound like you were actually in the recording studio with Elvis. And I swear, when you listen to this thing, it's fantastic. It sounds just like you're in the studio with Elvis. The best part of this set is disc 1 and 2, of course, because that's where they did a lot of that special mixing. I'm not so sure about 3 and 4 if they did that, because 3 and 4 is mostly alternate takes and things like that. And it sounds great, don't get me wrong, but I think the emphasis was on the first 2 discs and all the masters. And again, fantastic set. If you haven't got it, go out and get it. Of course, for vinyl people, there is the 2-record set that just came out as well. This is on black vinyl, and have not opened it, listened to it yet, but if it sounds anything like the CD, it's going to be incredible, I'm sure. They've been having like the main release that goes out, that you could go out and buy in the stores, right? And then Graceland will put out their own version of it on colored vinyl, and I have that here. And the only way that you can tell the difference is by the sticker. Like this is, let's see, this comes out in aqua and tangerine vinyl. I mean, why couldn't they have just said blue and orange vinyl? No, it's got to be aqua. I mean, they got to make it sound better more interesting. Like Living Stereo and Stereo Monogroove and all that other stuff. But anyway, whatever the case, they always do that almost all the time. There are other albums like you might see behind me up here. So this is the pink vinyl of the album Where No One Stands Alone, where Elvis does a duet with Lisa Marie. And that's the way it was issued in Graceland. And the other version, of course, is black vinyl. So you have these two here of this. I can't get this all on here, can I? Oh, yeah, I can. All right. You don't want to see my face anyway, right? Okay. So Okay, and you probably can't tell, but if you look at the stickers, one does say colored and one does not. But they're so close. I mean, the only way you can tell is to look at the sticker. So there you go. That's the new vinyl release. Then it seems like every Christmas they've got to put out a Christmas album, right? So this time I thought it was kind of cool because they said they were going to put out the classic Christmas album that came out, I think it was 2 years ago. It was like a Walmart release, and I'm pretty sure it was just on black vinyl. I don't remember if it was colored, but I heard that they were going to put out a Snowflake vinyl release. Ta-da! Snowflake vinyl. And I thought, this is kind of strange, but it's actually, I think it's described as clear vinyl, clear snowflake vinyl. I was actually very interested to see how this is going to look. And I'll tell you, when I opened up these things, or whenever I get a colored vinyl record, what I like to do is I like to open them. I don't like keeping them sealed. If you're going to get a colored vinyl record, open it up and take the colored vinyl out and show it. It just seems a little silly. If you're one of those people that has to have it sealed too, then get a second copy and leave that one sealed. But anyway, this is the Christmas release. This was available at Target and a Target exclusive. I think they're sold out, but if you go take a look, you might be able to still find it. And of course, I saved the best for last. And I got to say this, the story behind this album for me is a kind of an unusual one. But anyway, here is the new FTD. And oh my gosh, is this gorgeous. I mean, this is just gorgeous. Roger, I don't think Roger is watching my show, but Roger, if you're watching my show, you did a hell of a great job putting this one together. Not only is the cover absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and I mean, it looks just like an album if you went to a store in the 60s. This looks like the new Elvis album. This is how it looked back then. I know because I remember as a kid buying all of the new albums like Spin Out and Speedway and Clambake, etc. But anyway, this is absolutely stunningly gorgeous. But what makes it even better is the back cover. The back cover. I mean, look at the time they took to do this. I mean, if you know the Follow That Dream LPs, most of them has a great picture of Elvis on the front and a great picture of Elvis on the back. And that's it. And then they list the songs, right? They actually took the time to make the back cover look just as good as the front cover, or basically make the back cover look just like a 60s album, because this is what they usually did. They put a graphic of Elvis and they put some kind of design that, is sort of similar to things in the movie. Like the circle is the love machine, step right up. The love machine. And then there's the pictures of Elvis from the movie. And I got to say, in my opinion, this has got to be the most beautiful release that FTD has done. Now, here's my little story, real quick. After seeing the cover and admiring it and everything, one day I was thinking to myself, there's something about that cover that makes it extra special. What is it? What is it? And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. Several years ago, I had got a copy of an EP called See the USA the Elvis Way. And a lot of you may already know this, I know, but I had forgotten all about it. I actually had a copy of it, of the EP, and it was actually signed by Elvis Presley, an authentic signature, which I sold. And I'm going to show a picture of it here. You'll be able to see a picture. But I sold it, and boy, I tell you, I should have probably put that on my last show too as amazing finds, because it was a fantastic find. But anyway, that EP is sought after by collectors everywhere, and it's one of the more sought after Elvis import EPs that there is. I don't remember what country, but I'm sure one of you will remember, and you'll put it in the comments below. But anyway, I think it's Australian. Could be wrong. Fantastic job, Roger, again. Absolutely wonderful. I love this album. Now, one other last thing before we go or get going with our interview with Joe. Every once in a while, Follow That Dream will put something out. And, it's funny, like they ran the gambit of every Elvis album that there is, although there's a few missing for their 7-inch collection set. Okay, I think Elvis, Aloha from Hawaii is missing, Madison Square Garden's missing, but they put those out so many different ways. I doubt if it's ever going to come out. Elvis in concert would not be a bad idea, just to complete the whole set. But in the meantime, they've been putting out these, session sets that are very, very expensive, and this is the latest one, which is called Something for Everybody, and it's the Something for Everybody sessions. I love these releases. Don't get me wrong. Okay, it's Elvis. I love it, and the book is great. The cover is great. But do we really need 30-something takes of Wild in the Country, 25 takes of Lonely Man, and 20 takes of There's Always Me? I mean, you want to talk about really stretching it out, folks. I mean, the first two discs are okay because there's alternate takes and stuff from the album Something for Everybody. But then the next two discs are Wild in the Country stuff. And if you know as well as I do, there's only about 4 or 5 songs in that album or that movie that's related to that movie. And then they just got one right. I slipped, I stumbled, I fell, over and over and over and over again. This one I'm not too happy about. I got this as a Christmas present. Very grateful that I got it that way, because I probably wouldn't have actually bought it myself, because you're talking like $80. So these are really expensive. But anyway, I'm grateful to the person who gave this to me for Christmas. But I don't think it's something that it's their best work. I think they have other sessions, like the Kid Galahad sessions, and then the Viva sessions were pretty good. And Fun in Acapulco, well, they got sessions for other movies too. And don't be surprised, the Blue Hawaii is on its way, I'm sure, as well as Paradise Hawaiian Style, and several other movies that had, multiple takes. But Wild in the Country, kind of lame. I'm not really thrilled with all the songs in there anyway. So I thought I'd do something a little different and do some reviews of some new releases, which I might do in the future as well. But now let's get to part 2 of our interview with Elvis book author Joe Tunzi, and here it is. What was the magic moment that got you, that made you an Elvis fan, Elvis admirer, or whatever? Because I know a lot of people watching the show really like to hear the origin, when people first heard Elvis.
It was the Frank Sinatra show. My dad was a Frank Sinatra fan. Being Italian, he loved Frank Sinatra and Mario Lanza. So he made a point for all of us to gather around the TV to watch Frank Sinatra, and it happened to be the Timex special, Welcome Home Elvis. Mm-hmm. And I watched that special, the whole family watched it, and it was amazing because Elvis was so different compared to Frank Sinatra. And my dad made a comment and said, wow, that guy is very entertaining. And that was like the first time. I was 7 years old, and we watched that together. And he always watched it because Sinatra had, I think it was a weekly show. Mm-hmm. And from, I don't know what year, but my dad always watched that Frank Sinatra show. And he had,
wasn't that 1960?
Yeah, March 1960. Mm-hmm. I think the show was on. And that was my introduction to Elvis.
Now, was your dad a big Sinatra fan?
He was a Sinatra fan, but he also was a Mario Lanza fan.
Which Elvis was,
yeah,
a Mario Lanza fan.
And I would never forget, I was like 5 years old, and my dad had a record collection, which he always kind of steered me away from. I'll never forget it. He picked up a Mario Lanza album up, and it was Begin to Begin. I can still remember the color of it. It was like a purplish, light purple cover. And he said to me, and I was 5 years old at the time, and he said to me, "This is the greatest singer that ever lived. Mm-hmm. I want you to know that, Mm-hmm. And I was 5 years old. But I remember him telling me that. But that's how it started with the Sinatra show on TV. Mm. And another time, I was in the car. We were driving, my brother, my dad, And then Follow That Dream came on the radio in the car, and I was in the back seat, and I actually jumped up a little bit and told my dad, "Hey, put that louder. I want to hear that." And perched my head on the front of the seat just to hear it better. That was the first song was Follow That Dream.
What was it about Elvis? Was it his, I mean, you obviously saw him singing,
Right.
all right, so you saw him physically singing and what he looked like next to Frank.
Right.
And then you heard him on the radio and stuff.
Right.
So which of the two was the thing that really appealed to you the most? Was it the way Elvis looked and acted and, you know, his persona, his image, or was it the music and his voice? Which one was? Or
It's
was
a combination of all the things you just said.
Okay.
You know, it really was. And when you looked at him on that show, even though I was 7, there was something different compared to all the other people that were on that show. And it was almost like something like exciting, like if you got a new toy or something. You know what I mean? It was like, wow, this is something to explore.
Yeah. Yeah.
This guy's pretty cool, you know?
Yeah, when I first saw Elvis, of course, it was in Roustabout. All right, I heard his voice first, okay? And as the people, the viewers who watch the show know the story I've told, I saw Elvis I didn't see Elvis right away. I heard him on the soundtrack to Roustabout. Then I went to the show and saw the movie Roustabout, okay? So I heard him before I saw him, and it was, to me, it was the voice right away. I mean, this guy was, there was just something about his voice that was mesmerizing. And it just, I fell in love with his voice. And then I fell in love with the image. Because the tough guy on the motorcycle, and, and he always got the girl.
Yeah.
And whenever there was a problem, you sing to her.
My dad had a 58, by the way, pink Cadillac. Okay. And that was the car, And we drove to Deluxe Music, and he said, "I want to buy a couple of albums." And he bought It's Now or Never on 45. And I remember that because he played that, and I heard it, and I said, "Wow." So it snowballed a little bit, from there, but in the car, Follow That Dream, It's Now or Never, the Sinatra show. That was my introduction to Elvis as a kid.
So now, what was your first official Elvis record that you bought with your own money?
Well, here's the thing. After Follow That Dream that I heard, I went on to other things. So, and then we all gathered around the television again, but it was 1964. And it was the Beatles who came on. And I was a big Beatles fan. Not to the point where, I would, I just buy the latest 45 or the album, and was drawn away from Elvis at that period. What happened was, and I'll mention this, we gathered around the TV, and we watched the Elvis 68 TV special. So there was 3 family gatherings that we watched all together. There was the March Sinatra show, the Beatles in 64, and then the 68 TV. But before that, though, there was another interjection of Elvis. It was, I walked by a record store. It was 1967, okay? And I walked by a record store, and it was on Harlem and Foster. It was near our house. And the record store had this huge display of clam bake, okay, in the window.
In the window?
Yes, and I was walking by it, and I just had to go in, seeing the display, walking in, and the album was like $5 that I didn't have it. I think I had it like $3. So I went home. Okay, and I told my mother, I said, "Hey, you're going to go grocery shopping on Friday. Stop at the Harlem Foster record store and pick up this album on Elvis." She says, "What is it?" I said, "It's called Clam Bake." And I wrote it out, so she wouldn't forget. I got home that evening, late afternoon from school, and I said, "Did you get the album?" And she said, "Yeah, it's upstairs in your bedroom." I said, "Okay, great." I ran upstairs, saw it on the bed, but it wasn't Clambake. It was Elvis Golden Records.
Oh.
So she didn't get the right one. She got Elvis Golden Records.
Okay.
But in a way, she did get the right one, because that was my introduction to a full-length, long-playing album. And I played that album. And I said, man, I got to get another one of these. And I got to hear more of this man.
So did that start you, obviously, when you first saw him on Sinatra, then you heard the music and everything, that attracted you to Elvis. Then, so when did you actually then decide that you want to start collecting Elvis? And was it records, or was it 45s, albums?
It was both. And I want to mention this too, because it's important. But we would always listen to the radio too in the house, so we would hear songs, that Elvis did, in the '60s, Guitar Man, U.S. Mail, songs from Ain't That Lovin' You, Baby? I remember Crying in the Chapel, and I remember hearing these songs on the radio. So I was attuned to Elvis, but I was more interested in Dave Clark 5. Rolling Stones. Well, maybe not as much the Rolling Stones. I was more Dave Clark 5, Beatles. I was in that. But the Rolling Stones, I should say the Rolling Stones too. My buddy was a big fan of the Rolling Stones, so I would put them in that category too. But we listened to all that stuff, all the British Invasion stuff, and all the great San Francisco, some of the bands like the Beau Brummels and things like that. People that the British Invasion imitators too that were coming out. So I enjoyed all that. But so Elvis was always there in my head. But now you ask how it fully developed would be the '68 TV special, when we gathered around the TV, watched the special, and I had to get the album. Okay, and then I think I bought the album, and then I bought the 8-track of the '69 up from Elvis in Memphis. I bought the 8-track of that.
Okay.
And then I bought, and I'll never forget, I had a friend of mine who's used to go to the store, and I would give him a couple of bucks. Hey, listen, if you see this album, Elvis Gold Records, or if you pick them up, and pick it up for me, and I'll pay you. And, he used to do favors for people in the neighborhood. He was a nice guy, and he would do that, and that's how I started collecting, and then got the 45s, the 8-tracks.
I was just crazy about Elvis and the music. The music was always the thing to me. To this day, even in the year 2020, as depressing as things are, I pop on Girl Happy or something like that, and all of a sudden everything is erased. I feel good again. I feel great. But the music was always, to me, what attracted me. So when I bought the records, and I bought albums mostly. I had EPs and 45s, but mostly albums. But when I bought the albums, they were to me like just ways of hearing his music. I mean, I never thought about actually collecting them, and that didn't happen until much later. So I started collecting for the sake of just having the collection, because when I was listening to him before, I didn't collect. I just bought them and listened to them, and that was it. Yeah. That's basically what you did, right?
Basically what I did. I didn't know I was collecting either. You just bought them, and and they were, when I got my car,
right.
In 1971, I bought a '66 Chevy, and the first thing I did, my dad said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to put an 8-track player."
8-track player.
I put the 8-track player in, and went to Deluxe Music. His name was Bill. He was the proprietor, and I would go in there every week, and buy an 8-track. He would say, "Well, you need the album. You should get the album too."
Right.
And then the first cassette I bought was 1972, Elvis Now, and because he called me up, he would call me and say, "Hey, I got the latest Elvis album. It's in," and I would run down to the store, maybe 3 miles from my house, and one time he called me. I went down to the store, and he said, well, I made a mistake. The only thing I got, I thought I had the LP and the 8-track. I don't. I have the cassette.
Yeah.
I said, oh, man, I don't have any. I can't play a cassette.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have a player at that time. And he says, you sure you don't want it? And I said, all right, I'll take it. I brought it home. I didn't have anything to play it on. I'm just staring at the cassette.
Well, I think there was a time period in our lives where, we're close in age.
Yeah.
And there was a time period where, you were at home a lot. You go to school, you come home, you're at your room.
Yeah.
You got all your, your stuff up on the wall. You got your Elvis records and whatever.
Yep.
And you had time to stay at home.
Yeah.
A lot of kids would stay at home and you would listen to records. And that's where records took off. But in the 70s, that kind of changed because people were driving their cars more. Because I know once I got my car, the first thing I put in there was a cassette player. And the minute you put a cassette player in there, you can't hear Elvis, unless you go home. Yeah. So, for me, the first cassette I ever bought was Moody Blue. It was odd for me because I always bought the records. First cassette I ever bought. And it was more convenient. And that's why I think everybody went to cassettes.
And that's when, 1978, 79, this is when the shift was starting to happen, that 8-tracks were now being, stop manufacturing, basically. Mm-hmm. And I went to cassettes, and I say, well, we got to revamp the car. We got to get a cassette player. And then I started buying all the cassettes from 1978, and all the back catalog, and all the ones that came out. Mm-hmm. And then I started collecting them because basically you wanted to hear them in the car. I had a record store, too. I owned a record store back in the late 70s.
What about the books? What was your first book? And tell me how you decided to get into publishing books, especially about Elvis.
Yeah, it was 1988. There was the video, another area of collecting that I touched upon in a book called the First Elvis Video Price and Reference Guide, which was just something that I was kind of driven by all these collectible books, not only on Elvis, but coins, pottery, movie posters, and I thought, well, what about a book on Elvis video, since this is a new wave of interest? All the independent video stores opening up. Really had no knowledge about how to put a book together, other than what you have a printer, but as far as layout and all that stuff. So we kind of did it on a whim, and we didn't have, well, let's put it this way, we kept it in-house and did a lot of the work ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the book came out, and it sold really well. It knocked me out. I think we did a couple of thousand copies of this paperback book.
And what was the name again?
The First Elvis Video Price and Reference Guide.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Wow.
And it sold really well. I had people calling, I heard you had a video book, from all over Europe and U.S., Japan. And people say, I'll take 50 copies or 20 copies. And before I knew it, I was sold out. And a lot of people, liked it. It took off. And then it went from that book to a photo book, because there was a guy in Holland, a Jerif, and he did a book. And I got one of his books. I had a book called Elvis Encore Performance, and I wanted to do something that would be where I was attending. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do a book where I was actually at the show, because I felt it would be part of a testimonial and a scrapbook for me as well. Something that I can look back and say, well, yeah, I was at that show and I did a book on it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what happened. I did a book called Elvis Encore Performance, and that book, a couple of years later, sold really well. Back then you could sell 3,000, 4,000 books independently. Mm-hmm. And we did. We sold a lot.
And so that was like volume 1?
Yeah, volume 1.
Okay, because right here,
yeah.
I have volume 4.
Right.
I know it's special to me. Yeah. I mean, the minute I saw it, I bought it. Right away, I said, I got to have it. Because I opened it up, and here's pictures from every show Elvis did in Chicago. Yeah. And I saw him all 3 times, not every single show. Like he did a matinee.
Right.
I saw him in the 72 matinee,
Right.
which was awesome because up to that point, I'd only seen him in a jumpsuit.
Right.
And
Yeah, you
all
saw
of a
him with a
sudden, you're
shirt.
standing there and he walks out, he's wearing a coat and a shirt. And he starts singing, I can't remember if it was That's All Right, Mama or whatever. And then he takes off the coat and he's got this fabulous shirt on. And it was like, wow, this is great. And then somebody told me that later that night, it was a light blue jumpsuit. This was fantastic because I was able to see a lot of photos. Now, how do you come up with some of these pictures?
I tried to get professional photography. Very few. Fan.
Unless you're Ed Banja.
Yeah, well, Ed was a professional photographer.
Yeah, Ed Banja.
I used to see Sean Shaver at shows.
Sean Schaefer was another one, yes.
Yeah, and I used to see him.
Yeah.
And I remember watching him, talking to Elvis's security at the beginning of the show. And sometimes I was up close and had good seats. And you would see Sean Shaver. Specifically, I remember that in St. Louis, June 28th, 1973. And at that show, that's where I met him. And he, he would move his way to the front. He got his way to the front.
Yeah.
And took some great pictures.
He did. And if I can add a little bit to that story too, is the very first show I ever did in Memphis. I remember going to the show and I met someone said, well, this is Sean Schaefer. And I remember shaking his hand and everything, and he was with his gorgeous wife. He had a gorgeous wife. I can't remember her name now, but I remember looking through his books, and I'm like, holy cow! I mean, incredible stuff. Yeah. Some really, really incredible shots, and we were very fortunate because the very next year in '88, my wife and I, Carol, who's here, we were set up right next to Sean. If you remember that.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And Sean had his books out and everything, and his wife was there again. Yeah. His books sold like lightning. I mean, they were like, and to this day, if you can find original Sean Schaefer books, they're in the hundreds of dollars.
I know. I wanted to actually get professional photographers who worked for the newspapers who covered the shows.
Okay, that was good.
And that was a virgin territory because there were no books. I mean, other than a few here and there. But I thought, let's try to purge some of these archives in the newspapers across the United States and see if we can find photographs and put together. Because if they worked for a newspaper, these guys were talented photographers.
Right.
And then some people would say, I want to mention this so I don't forget it. Some people say, well, Tunzi's books, they're all in black and white. Well, let me tell you something. Most of the newspaper photography
they shot in
black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to interject again. I'm sorry for interjecting, but you brought back another thing to my mind. We had another show, and I think you were there. Because I have, as a matter of fact, I have some pictures I'll show everybody of Joe at one of my shows. There was a show I did, maybe you might remember it, where I had a photographer from New York called me and said, I want to set up. Or no, it was a guy, and he said, I bought this black and white photo collection from this newspaper.
Charlie Munch.
Is that it? Charlie Munch.
Charlie Munch.
And he did my show, and the pictures that were coming out of there were incredible. Were you there?
I was there.
Did you actually get some of those pictures?
I did get some of them. I did. But I'm going to tell you, I'll put it in perspective. When you say that, Charlie Munch, at the end of his run at your show, he went out and bought a camper, from what I remember.
Okay.
With all the money that he made.
Okay.
A camper.
To show you how much money he made.
And took that over the road, I think, with him. That's what I heard. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Did he sell the remaining part of those photos, I think? Because he didn't sell everything.
He sold most of them.
Yeah, and then I think he sold them to some other
He sold them
dealer.
all the big collectors wanted their hands in there. and they got him.
Well, that would make sense, though. I mean, I always wondered how you did that. So you basically went into, you tried to check into people's libraries, I mean, as far as newspapers
Right.
that may have photos of Elvis when he was in concert or in town in concert, etc. And then would you try to come up with a theme for the book and then put it together that way?
I've done a lot of books where I actually was at the show. Mm-hmm. And that really makes it worthwhile. Mm-hmm. Okay, if they're just not done, to put a book together. I wanted to do it where I can look back, and go, wow, I remember being, in South Bend in '74, and I did a book on it because I remember Zenon. He was the photographer. He was going as a lawyer at Notre Dame. But I saw this guy in 1974, October 1st. I was there with my dad, actually, because he went to some of the shows with me. He became a big fan. Remember, the Mario Lanza guy now is into Elvis. And, of course, he's responsible for me meeting Elvis, which is another story. But getting back to 74, October 1st, I saw this guy, Zenon, and he was all over the place. He was, front of the stage, back of the stage, shooting pictures, and they were just letting him do it. Nobody was saying nothing. Mm-hmm. And then I marked it down one day, maybe I'll do a book, and I knew who to go to. I knew his name, and I said, let's do it. And he came over to my house one day, and he had all the negatives, and I said, you don't mind, and I paid him good. Tried to pay all these people good for the photography. Because you can't do it without their permission, basically, or the newspaper's permission. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, too, I would buy the pictures from some of these newspapers that were out of business, and I would claim the copyright. But that's another story. Most photographers shot 70, 80, photos for one image that would appear in a newspaper.
And sometimes you can make a whole book out of it, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you would have to try to follow up with a lead from another photographer who might have been on that same tour. So it just, like collecting, it would be researching collecting and trying to find good deals. It would be researching and trying to find good photographs with the newspapers.
Now, I wanted to ask you about this book, too. This is another one out of my collection. I really like this book quite a bit because, for me, as an Elvis collector, again, I like the music, and I followed Elvis in the charts. I mean, in Chicago, as you know, we had the WCFL, WLS charts.
WCFL,
and I would buy them, the chart. Well, actually, I'd go to the record store, buy the record, and I remember when Suspicious Minds went to number one, I took like 5 or 6 of those surveys and pinned them up on my wall in like a thing saying, Elvis is number one again, It was so cool.
Yeah.
Yes. But this book now, this, of course, has got some great pictures. This is a fantastic picture on the back that I don't know where you got that from, but great picture. And I noticed in here you also have other pictures, too. But what's interesting about this book, I think, is not so much the photos, but how you came up with all this information. I mean, this is a lot of information. Right. How long did it take you to put together this book, for example?
Well, that was a while, and not just to acquire the data, but from Billboard was a very hard thing. They have a guy who record research, Joel Whitburn, who does his own books.
Right. We actually know Joel Whitburn through a family member.
There you go.
One of Carol's family knew Joel.
My uncle.
There you go. How
Carol's uncle.
I met him one time, and he was from Wisconsin. I went to Billboard because I had to get the licensing to reproduce the charts.
Okay.
And that was the hard part. Even all those charts that we put in the book, each individual chart we had to pay for to use. And it got, it got to be expensive, but it was worth it because I got their blessing. They said, okay, I said, I'm not going to infringe on record research because I'm doing a book just on Elvis. And I got in touch with them. They weren't really overjoyed that I was going to do it, but they didn't say you couldn't do it. And Billboard gave me the okay to do it, and then that's how we accumulated all the charts.
But you have other charts, too, in there.
You know what?
Not just Billboard.
Exactly. We've got some box.
Cash box.
And all the Cashbox settings, too, charts. I think this book, when you get down to it, shows how great Elvis was.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody really wants to know, they can read all the biographies. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you can get all the different opinions. Elvis, but to show you how great Elvis was and why he is just always going to be, like that book says, number one, is in here.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's one of my favorite. I don't have a lot of Elvis books because there's so many. Okay, but to me, again, being a collector and loving the music and being a fan, whenever I find a book where it's just filled with information that validates Elvis's position as one of the biggest selling artists of all time and that type of thing, I will put this book, your book, next to my second favorite book is done by Ernst Jorgensen, which is the book of every single recording. Okay, that must have been hard, but easier for him to do than you, obviously, because he had all access to everything.
Exactly, he's an insider.
Right,
so
he's an insider, so he could get all that information, which to me is a great book because I can go and look at Suspicious Minds and see who was there, who was recording, who sang backup vocals, and all that kind of stuff. And then he would add a little piece of history into the recordings. This is more a book where you see how all of that affected us, the consumer, the collector, the person who bought the music, who listened to him on the radio and stuff like that. So those are my two favorite books, that one and the other one.
Well, maybe the next one will be your favorite because we're going to do a Sessions 4 that we did on the recording sessions, which is going to be totally different. Okay, because it is going to be visually very impactful, visually, as well as the information. But information you can get that on the internet from a lot of places. But so what would make Sessions 4 different is it's going to be things that you never did see before that were related to the songs and the recordings that Elvis did.
Oh, cool.
Whether that be pictures, documents, letters, all kinds of things that nobody's ever seen.
And another book you did too, now I think of, I was going to get it and I went back to the shop and damn it, it's sold out. There was a book where you showed the actual photo of what it looked like when it wasn't on the album cover. And you found the original picture and you showed the picture and then what it looked like on the sleeve or on the album cover. I thought that was awesome.
The definitive vinyl book, which is we're going to update that book eventually.
So before you go, how do you remember me throughout the years?
First of all, you had the best displays. You had it all shown. You were showing everybody your wares. You know what I mean? And then what you had, and you just had a system, and that attracted me to it. And I needed that, and I could see it, and I that was the spark, for me to come and be drawn. I was drawn to your setup.
I got a lot of compliments on that, but I have to compliment my wife Carol too because we worked very, very hard to make things look a certain way. If you're gonna sell something, you want everybody to see what you got and make it easy for people, to get to.
Absolutely.
Before we go, now you have these books here.
Yes.
Did you want to say something about these books?
This is a new book. You can. These are going to be.
Okay. Yours, that's right. I'll be easy to. I can hold them up.
This is a book about Elvis in Phoenix. The opening in Phoenix after That's the Way It Is, and it contains a good 120 photos, unpublished photos of Elvis. It's a good. It's a nice book, and it comes with a CD.
Okay, and this is brand new.
Brand new.
Okay.
And then the CD has the last interview with Chip Smallman, which is really cool.
Oh, the last interview. Okay, cool.
And you can. Actually, it's very interesting. And this is 1964, the year that changed America and me. This year was very impactful, and I thought, you know what? It's not 100% Elvis. There's a section of Elvis and Roustabout, but I always wanted to do it because that year made a strong impact on me. So I thought I'd put it out a book on it, and it sold really good.
Well, this year makes a big deal to me because this was the year I first heard Elvis in Roustabout.
Yeah, and there's some great Roustabout pictures.
And there is a great Roustabout picture right on the back. That is awesome. And how can people get these books?
You go to the website, www.jatpublishing.com.
Okay. All
Great.
right. Well, listen, I want to thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
it was, oh, well, you're welcome.
Because you know what, I wanted to do it because you have done a remarkable job in the Elvis world, and
thanks.
I couldn't think of anybody better to sit down and talk to than you. And
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I really want to thank Joe Tunzi for being on the show and doing that interview with us. And I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Joe's a great guy. And don't forget to pick up his book, which is coming out pretty soon, The Comprehensive USA Artwork Guide to Elvis Presley Tapes. We're planning on doing more shows. And, thanks to all the response that you've given us, which is why we always say subscribe, subscribe, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that button. If you like the show, make sure you hit the like button. And we're getting a lot of great response, so we're going to continue doing this. And just an example of some of the future shows. One show will be basically all a show on rare Elvis 45s, then one on Sun Records, or maybe both. Las Vegas memorabilia, which I'm a big fan of. Movie and television memorabilia for stuff from Elvis's TV appearances and, of course, his movies. Promotional records, whether it be LPs or 45s. Elvis on Tour souvenir items, which we are going to be featuring a lot of the items from Al DeVorn's collection. And for those of you who don't know Al DeVorn, he's the guy who said,
Elvis has left the building. Thank you and good night.
Yep, that's him. He had some fantastic pieces of souvenirs, of memorabilia and stuff. And we'd also like to hopefully have his son, Howard DeVorn, on the show as well to talk about his dad and talk about Elvis and stuff like that. So that's another show we're looking at doing. And then, of course, we're going to do a kind of a nostalgic show. We're going to do a whole show dedicated to the Elvis for Everyone record and memorabilia show in Memphis, Tennessee, that we did for many, many years and went through many names and titles. And we're going to feature a lot of people from that time period and maybe have a few guests and people maybe zooming in on us and making a few little appearances and talk about the shows and that type of thing. So we're going to be doing that as well. So plenty of stuff to come. And again, thank you for being there and making that all possible. I want to remind you that Sounds Good Records is still in business. We have over 1,000 Elvis 45s, CDs, and LPs in stock, as well as RCA promotional items, sheet music, authentic Las Vegas and tour souvenirs, and much more. Most items you see on the show are also for sale. So if you happen to see something that on the show that you're interested in, anything behind me or something we talked about, just send me an email at collectingtheking@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to answer you and let you know if the item is still here, what it's selling for, and that kind of thing. If you have a want list, stuff you're looking for, I can check my inventory. All you do is send me a list, let me know what you're looking for, and I'll check it out and see if I have it. And if I don't, maybe I can even find it for you. Okay? So, that about wraps up the show. I am Robert Alaniz. This is the Collecting the King Show, and I am out of here.